They were the stories that have charmed an entire generation. From the books to the television series, people around the world have grown up with the railway stories, and all their cheerful characters. But the truth behind Thomas and his friends was no children's fantasy. The truth would be horrifying. It is 1945, and the remote island of Sodor, off the northwest coast of England, has emerged from the fog of World War II, relatively unscathed and untouched.
The island served as a detention camp for Germans living in England. That's how Professor came to be here.
Professor Wilhelm Goetze was born in 1903 in Munich, Germany. A doctor in biology, he became a prominent advisor to the ruling party in the 30s.
Wenn die älteren Jahrgänge noch wanken werden könnten, die Jugend ist uns verschrieben und verfallen mit Leibesgeschehen.
In 1939, as war escalated, he, his wife Olga, and 4-year-old son Hans fled the country.
Tja, ich habe nie einen solchen Befehl bekommen. Er hat einmal gefragt, nicht wahr? Am 14. Mai 1942 war der Großadmiral Räder und ich bei ihm.
That's what he wanted people to believe. The fact is, his experiments were hard to stomach even for his own people.
In truth, he had become a prominent figure in the government, but as his work progressed, questions and objections had been raised in the higher echelons of the Reich.
His work with genetics and DNA was truly pioneering. The cracking and manipulating of the human genome. What Professor Goetze was most successful in, however, was keeping his history a secret until his death.
In an attempt to gain favour among the German hierarchy, Wilhelm Goetze was at the forefront of the government's most fanatical policies. In 1938, he was influential in instigating the infamous Sajmelnacht, the Night of Sawdust. But, as his experiments advanced, he became a much less popular figure and soon feared for his and his family's lives.
As soon as he escaped to England, he was banged up here. But locals were nice to him, there was no hostility, and many of them chose to live here after the war.
Following their release, Professor Goetze, Olga and young Hans chose to remain. After studying under his father, Hans left at the age of 18 and went to university on the mainland, studying biology and engineering, writing several pioneering papers about genetics and the splicing of DNA with mechanical implants.
He called it biofusion, the technique of manipulating genetic material to splice with mechanical attachments. However, much like his father, the British government became more and more concerned with Hans Goetze's proposals. So he was forced to seek financial backing from home.
His dad left Germany with quite a few bob, so Hans came back. He saw our little island as some sort of refuge where he could work in peace. Soon every nutcase and eccentric was coming over.
By 1962, Hans had set up Sodor Research, a small lab near the town of Alsborough, but soon the enterprise began supplying medical equipment and machinery, and quickly grew to become a large complex, comprising its own links to the growing Sodor rail system.
Young Abby Collins from the town was working there when Professor Hans took a liking to her. Soon they were married, and not long after, the town was buzzing with news of her pregnancy.
Baby Thomas was born in 1968. Throughout the early years of his life, he would watch the growing railway network with fascination.
He couldn't get enough of trains. His dad bought him one of the first video cameras, and he'd be on the platforms every day. You can see me in some of those tapes.
Hiya, Mr. Hartley.
Morning, Thomas. But he was friends with everyone, even that simple bloke who could only say where he lived.
Sodor.
But his favourite trains were the old steam engines.
Steam engines were a dying art on the British mainland, but Hans also had a fondness for them, much like his son, and likes to keep them running for our purposes, taking orders from the labs to the growing docks. or to the mainland to be transferred to modern postal express trains.
But as the Sodor rail